Amazing. Scott Brinker from HubSpot. I am beyond excited. Thank you so much for joining me on the Product Tea with Leah, where we spill the tea and everything else that we should not spill.
Awesome. I
Uh,
am thrilled to be here.
you should be. You should be. You and your amazing wall that you always have with you all the time. Let's just get right into it. Can you introduce yourself and then I introduce you back to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Scott Brinker, I wear two hats. I am the VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot, responsible for their tech app integration ecosystem. My hobby is, after a full day of working in Martech, I come home and like to relax by diving into more Martech, writing the chiefmartech.com blog.
That is, now you took half of the introduction away that I wanted to give about you, but okay. No, that was a great introduction. So, why are we talking in the first place on this podcast? Well, I started coaching product leaders and other leadership people a couple of years ago. And then at some point, I got into advising companies. And I noticed relatively quick that I'm going to always hit a specific wall because you can only coach or advise companies so far on just product. And now I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to marketing. I also knew that, like for my personal growth plan, it was relatively clear. I've been working in product for 12 years, 10 years in UX engineering and research. So I knew that I have to get better at sales, marketing, and business valuation. And for marketing, what I discovered is that my 2000, my millennia knowledge from the 2000s was not good enough anymore. And I started to look for stuff and I found you. Totally random. I don't remember exactly why I found you. It could have been because of your Martech map or whatever. We're going to talk about this in a second. But the thing is with you, just by following you on LinkedIn, completely random, it doesn't matter when, there's just so much value about what is going on in Martech and conversely also in marketing in general at scale. I found that absolutely fascinating and I love following your rabbit holes. And this is the thing where I could imagine you just coming home, sitting there, not caring about the LinkedIn algorithm at all, because you just push out sometimes updates in like 5 minutes and then another one and then another one. And I just know you're sitting on your chair and you're like, oh my God, this is interesting. Oh my God, there's the next interesting. And you just push it out. And you don't care whether there's 4 hours in between, whether it makes sense for the most engagement, you just push it out. And I love it. And I'm here for it. Um, is that
Awesome.
accurate?
I feel seen.
Yeah. So this is your relevance in my life. No, I really mean this. I think you've helped me grow on the marketing side so much. I'm still not an expert, so you cannot take credit for that. I pretend to. I mean, I'm really solid in product marketing, but like all the other stuff was really news to me. And I think you really have amazing content, but you also have this talent of visualizing it really well. So I also encourage people who did not hear about you. So all of these sinners should go to YouTube and also just Google your name. You have some amazing presentations out there, especially when it comes to marketing at scale, which I think is a fantastic topic. So let's just dive right into it if you don't mind. I don't want to stay too long on this topic because you're probably tired of talking about it. Can you tell us what the Martech map is? Because you are the author of this.
Sure. So back in 2011, I was trying to convince more and more CMOs who were kind of tech adverse that they really needed to hire some more technical talent in the marketing department. And there was a lot of pushback on that of like, really, why we're marketing? Why do we need to know about technology? And so I put together this map of, at the time, what was 150 different marketing technologies, marketing automation and website management and SEO and all this stuff, just to sort of show them like, there's a lot of tech in the modern marketing org. And, everyone was like, oh my goodness, 150 marketing technologies. It's like mind blowing. And so anyways, year over year, I kept going back and I figured, well, let's update the map. And something like really crazy happened. Like it was growing exponentially. It went from 150 to 300, and then there was 1,000 and 2,000 and 4,000. And we published one here earlier this year. There's nearly 10,000 solutions on this Martech landscape. So it's been an attempt, probably an attempt in vain, to every year just try and catalog across all the different categories of marketing technology. What are the companies we know of or the product solutions serving that? And it becomes kind of I don't know how useful it is because it's kind of a bit of an eyesore at this point, but it is an interesting reflection on just how much has changed in marketing from a technology perspective, and what the scale of
Now,
that is like.
yeah, and I just want to double down on this. If you have not seen this piece of art, because this is not an Excel sheet with 8,000 lines. I don't know, Scott, did you copy all of these icons out, sorted them, and then put them into the correct? Did you do that? No, because what you did, like, this is insane. Okay, just
It
go to
is.
Scott Brinker's LinkedIn profile and check his header. This is the amount of crazy that you went through. This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing because you didn't just like throw the logos in there. No, 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 no. You also tried to sort it, and here's the core value proposition of these logos, right?
It was a bit of an adventure. I will say we started cheating this year because we stopped using the full logos, partly
Yeah,
because of the time it takes to harvest them, but also partly like we were running out of space. So this year we kind of moved to just using the fave icons, which we could like
yeah,
programmatically
fair enough.
scrape from all the sites. So we've
Yeah.
had to start cheat because I mean, my
Well,
goodness, trying to fit 10,000 things on a single slide. It's been an interesting exercise in visualization, if nothing
it's
else.
amazing. It is absolutely amazing. And I think what I love about it, unironically, and this goes for all the content in general that we all produce, I think visualizing the commoditization of our spaces is showing exactly how this entire how do you say, like, the landscape is changing of how we develop products, how we market products, how we sell them, and with what tools. Because now companies have choice. It's not just about what marketing does with it. You can replace it with any industry, but now you have choice between Martech tools. So what do you need to do if you want to escape the commoditization? You need to specialize. And if you in the specialization, you also need to specialize, right? So we have specialization tools for specialization tools, and so forth and so forth. And I know you have some interesting opinions about this as well, because now we're starting to get into a point where I have 20 different tools for all my 20 different marketing functions. So now, is there a tool that unifies all of them? I don't know. Which is interesting because the company that you work with, HubSpot, is also really good at unifying different pillars or verticals into one kind of company. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it also afterwards. But I would like really to go back to a little bit more generic um, topics on marketing, if you don't mind. So
Yeah,
that
let's
was a
take it away.
that was a great introduction on the Martech map. And yeah, so one of the questions that I also asked Jennifer Montague on my last, she says hi, by the way. Also, at some point, she said that she contacted you and you never responded.
Oh
So I should,
no.
no, no, I should tell to you, like, how dare you? And
Yeah,
the,
boy, that's
the,
clearly a total miss on my part. So,
the question that I also asked her is that, why do MQLs suck, Scott? Why do they suck? Why do marketing qualified leads suck?
so this actually relates to what you were just talking about of specialization of marketing technology. Is I think in all technology or everything in business and digital life, things are changing so quickly. We tend to go through this sort of cyclical pattern of convergence and diversification. And to me, like, okay, once upon a time, this whole concept of like how leads were being generated in marketing and getting, passed on to sales and in what way and what segment was kind of fragmented, different companies doing it in different ways. And then the folks at Serious Decisions, really came up with this model of, the demand waterfall. And they tried to establish a very, rigid, like, okay, this is how something, becomes an MQL and then it becomes an SQL. And that was actually very helpful because it gave the industry, like some common language and some common framing, to move forward. But, this is where the other side of the cycle starts to come in, is as you start to standardize and commoditize things, you start to actually lose some of the very differentiation, that actually is how companies stand out and how they win. There's both differentiation with how your company handles prospects in their journey with you. But also, yeah, not all prospects are equal. There are very different segments, and depending on your business, there might be many different segments, and sort of how you manage, like, okay, well, at what point in time, does for this segment, it actually makes sense for them to engage with a salesperson? And is that a different sales motion than, what happened before? I know we're going to talk a little bit about product-led growth, but that's another example of, like,
Yeah.
just a very different set of signals, and steps that people are navigating their way through. And so I don't know, my take on why MQLs can suck is if we're almost like now too commoditized in how we're thinking about that, it's robbing us of the innovation of, okay, well, how do we actually distinguish customer journeys for our particular business?
Yeah, and that is fantastic, because in the end, what an MQL is, it is an end of a funnel. It is something that you can hand off. And I think what we are constantly droning on about is finding your ICPs, and that goes for sales, and this is the funny thing, right? Like ICPs, the ideal customer profile, is so powerful once we find it, for marketing, for sales, and for product at the same time. But it also means that you need to focus. And if you need to focus, that means you're going to go into this niche that you just talked about, right? So, like, we're specializing for something. And this has been the most proven way to work. You find your niche and then you expand, right? HubSpot also did not have 5 products at the same from the start, right? There was one, and then there was the company strategy. Okay, we're going to expand to 5 or whatever. And I think this is very, very interesting, because one of the I saw an episode just today, actually, where someone sent me, like, hey, an episode, and said, like, hey, look, this is how you're doing marketing. Like, that was a really interesting episode. And the guys were talking about, I think they were, I don't know who it was, but these guys were just like talking about marketing in general. So, like, how do you sell to people? But like on a very,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but like every marketer just wants people to buy immediately. And we should focus more on the customer success. Everything that they said was correct, but none of it was more like a complaining about the state of marketing, but it was very, very clearly on a very small scale, because none of them was talking about incentivization, for instance, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
also where I'm talking about MQLs again, right? So one of the things that I notice here is that when we talk about marketing, and this is also the stories that we see on LinkedIn and stuff, um, people are very fast on just bashing, like, oh, you're selling wrong, oh, you're doing this wrong, and you're this wrong. And for me, my pulse is always like, my blood pressure just goes up immediately, because that's usually not the problem. The companies that I advise they don't know how to incentivize different, right? Because marketing has a completely different incentivization structure, if any, than with sales. So for marketing, you need to have a different organizational structure, so they're not just handing off the leads without quality attachment. And this is an interesting question to you also at scale, right? Like, it's easy to, if you have one sales rep or one marketing person, it's easy to align them, right? Like, we want to do the stuff the way that Scott wants to do. What if I have 30, 40 marketing people? And I know I want to do it like HubSpot. I want to do it inbound. How am I doing this? How do I align them? Do you have an opinion on this?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's interesting. There's probably two related answers to this. So one of them is certainly this is one of the reasons why it hasn't been so much the rise of Martech in the past 10 years, so much as it's been the rise of marketing operations, and for really good reason. Because, I mean, again, as anyone will tell you, right, was that whole thing like the iron triangle, or like, people, process, technology. It is not an equilateral triangle, right? It's like, the technology is actually a relatively like small piece of, making this work. It is the people process side of things where like all the real heavy lifting, gets done. And so this is really what makes marketing operations, it's become such a critical function, is because as we've scaled the responsibilities that marketing has, I mean, marketing is doing a lot more activities across a lot more channels. There's a much deeper set of alignment between marketing and sales today than there was, oh my goodness, like 20 years, ago, when marketing was just the arts and crafts department off on the side. There's just so much happening here that you really need this marketing operations group to be essentially acting as the orchestrators, and the technology is a piece of that, but it's also like, the data definitions, the segment definitions, what are the stages, how do we hand off, how do we make sure things aren't, dropping, between the cracks. And so this is why, it really is marketing ops, that has arguably been the force that has risen, even more so than Martech. But what's interesting is in the past few years, there's been a really strong movement to even go beyond marketing ops, because as it turns out, right, there's a marketing ops group. And then over here, there's a sales ops group. And then over here, there's a customer success ops group. And, and finance, they have their own, and you realize that, like, okay, yes, each of these do have certain specializations, but what we're really trying to do is align and orchestrate how these things are working together for, like, the complete, customer experience, and so this has been the rise, at least particularly in B2B, around the concept of the RevOps function, which is actually in many cases like pulling marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops, finance into a combined group, so that, like, okay, this isn't so much handoffs as much as it is sort of one continuous process. I think that's one way of looking at, like, okay, how do you achieve marketing at scale? Well, you need an ops infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a ton of sense. So, so two questions to this. When would you say, like, from a very, very rough perspective, when is the first signal that you need to think about marketing ops? Because that's not your first hire in marketing. This is coming when you're putting it at scale. When is the first time when you would start to think about marketing ops?
It's interesting, because I think even in a small startup, you want someone ideally who's wearing the hat. Like, it might not be their only hat. It's the, startup, I wear 5 hats, chief cook and bottle washer. But the truth is, right, I mean, we tend to be doing so much activity, even in startups in marketing, and we're running all these experiments, and we're trying to understand, like, very often, if in that early stage, it's trying to understand product market fit, and to do that, like, requires, like, a tremendous amount, of experimentation and exploration about, who are different audiences, how would we message to them, what's the channel for it, what's the packaging, all these things. And if you're just sort of doing that randomly ad hoc and you're not actually tracking it and maintaining it in a little bit more of an operational way, you're probably wasting, a tremendous amount of effort and insight. And so, again, don't want to get carried away. Don't want the process to weigh down the, sort of really entrepreneurial energy at that startup phase. But I think having someone who's thinking about, like, okay, well, where are we keeping track of all these people we're touching? And, we can look over time, to see how the performance of these different cohorts are. I think it's then once you say, like, I mean, certainly by the time you actually find product market fit, and you're in a position where you're like, okay, we now know what we need to do. Now we need to scale it. I think that's the point in time where you want to say, like, oh, we probably want an ops person who is really going to take us from hopefully our semi-organized work we did to something that's going to be really designed to be systematic at scale.
Yeah. I think my base understanding goes also along this way, because I think we also have product ops at some point, right? So, like,
of course, we have ops for everything. ML ops, data ops.
Yeah, ops the ops. And when, like, you think about depending on how you look about it, of course, but, like, I also agree that probably marketing ops comes before product ops, because product ops usually comes just because you cannot scale really at some point a specific product organization anymore. It just does not work anymore. But for different reasons. And I love this analogy that you said, because I think marketing needs to connect sooner with other departments out of necessity than product has to, right? Product can just hide a little bit. Product can say, well, we can do our own marketing with our PMM teams, right? We have a product marketing managers. That's fine, kind of fine, right? We can do our go-to-market. We don't need to do brand. That's what the other guys do, and so forth. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer for this, but I think that makes a lot of sense. So, so here's the thing that really pisses me off about LinkedIn, or, like, not LinkedIn, but, like, on LinkedIn, or, like, some story that is being perpetuated. And I would love to hear your take about it. When it comes to product-led growth as a distribution channel and in terms of, okay, here's how we market the product or anything in this regard. And I think it's going to be the same for marketing, because usually this affects, and I think that's where the name is a bit stupid. Like, the name is a bit misleading, because it's not just like, oh, product becomes dominant and marketing is out of the window and sales we don't care about anymore. But like, the thing is, people act on LinkedIn and in the socials where I am like people are stupid. Oh, you guys don't know how to sell. Oh, you guys don't know how to do PLG. Here are 5 tips on how you can do PLG. It requires an immense force, not just in product, but from the entire organization, to pivot from a sales-led organization that is pushing 50 million ARR, and that's not necessarily a big company either, to just change the entire distribution model. What do you do with the sales, right? Like, do you have a data infrastructure that can measure everything? Is your marketing ready to be taken care of? Like, it's one thing to say, oh, you guys have to take care of the entire funnel. Do you also see this happening? Because it really annoys me how they pretend that people are stupid. They don't see it. But whenever I advise companies, I see they want to do it, but they don't have the skills to do it. And they also don't know how to hire for it. Is this something that you also start to notice in this regard?
I can definitely relate to what's pissing you off there. I think there's sort of two different things here. First of all, there's the 5 tips approach to like advice in general. That I mean, again, there's clearly a bunch of people out there who love to consume that, and a bunch of people love to write it. But I don't know. I find so many things in the real world, there's not easy, quick tips to solve it. Is like the hard thing about hard things. This part of the reason, like, we have professionals, like we have, people who, like that. There is such a rush for talent and whatnot in this space, is because these things they're trying to do, they're not easy. They're not cookbook, follow this recipe and check, and you're done. So anyways, probably going off on a tangent there. But that being said, I actually think PLG is, again, one of these things where, again, we were talking about like this sort of convergence and diversification. PLG is not a single, like, oh, this is the PLG playbook. It is incredibly contextually determined by your actual product, the customers, your larger go-to-market strategy. I mean, again, like, you can just think of it like, is it a product that's entirely self-service? Is it a product that has a freemium motion before, people pay it, but still entirely self-service? Oh, is it one of these things where we get a bunch of people inside a company to individually adopt, but we're doing that to then get a play of, how we aggregate for more of an enterprise license? Is it something that, oh, no, people are purchasing this through, like sales channels or distribution channels, but we're using, feedback on how they're using the product as the way to, like, guide the right times for sales and CS people to, like, engage with them, help them, make them the right, upsell offers. I mean, there's just what about products that have different personas in them? It's not like this sort of universal, user that, there's, I mean, like, again, like in HubSpot, I mean, you have, marketers and salespeople, and there's managers of this stuff, and there's the actual reps, and, there's admins, I mean, there's just like all these different things. Like, when you're thinking about, okay, how am I integrating these product interactions in a way to feedback into either winning new customers, upselling customers, retaining customers. It's just, there's just a lot of, like, varieties of how you would do that, depending on your particular product, your audience, and your broader go-to-market strategy. And so I think that might be one of the things that just makes it very, I mean, frustrating is probably overstating it, but like, here, 5 easy tips for PLG. Well, like,
no, but it's like, look, it's just that, I mean, why does nobody say, like, here's 5 tips for SaaS? Okay, because SaaS is a business model that you either do it or you don't, and whatever. But and you track different metrics, but it's relatively simple, right? So like that's what made SaaS as a business model. And I'm not talking about the PLG motion now of any of it. relatively easy to understand and also to integrate, right? Like it was just like, okay, you either sell as a SaaS business or you are hardware or you're e-commerce, whatever. It's a relatively clear distinction. The thing with PLG is like you can do PLG, you can do marketing still, and you can also do a sales led approach at the same time. It's not like either or. That's the first
Yeah.
thing. And usually there's a rat's tail coming at the end of it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like it's so easy to say, hey, track your customers' behavior and reward your salespeople on the success of your customers. Okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean? That is there's a you need to have an experimentation system. You need to have a good BI software. Then most of your, and this is the next question to you, if your salespeople don't know how to write SQL, you need to have a BI tool that can actually visualize all of this, right? So like, how do they interpret the data? Can they do like, okay, like we have an account of 500 people at Miro that are using our software. How can I get actionable insights out of this so the sales call goes different than if I did not have the information? Because PQLs are only as good as the information that you provide with them.
Mm-hmm.
So here's maybe a question to this, maybe a little bit of a detailed question, but I remember you speaking about this. What is your opinion on the skills of marketers and how they have evolved? And I'm not talking now about what marketers need to have in terms of like marketing skills and I need to be able to sell something, but like, does a modern marketer today, in your opinion, have to have statistical knowledge, SQL skills, any of this?
Well, okay, so this is where we get into an interesting place because the number of things that marketing as a combined function are now responsible for doing and doing well, it is very hard to find one individual who embodies all of those capabilities. So I mean, again, like, you can go through this stuff of like, hey, listen, analytics skills, super important. The ability to do like, process development, whether it's like workflow or no code app or, configuration, even in things like automations or sequences. This is, a skill, things, the classic skills, copywriting, graphic design, how do we do the, customer, analysis. I mean, all this stuff, it's all part of modern marketing, and it's really, really hard to find, unicorn people who are great at all of it, And so I think one thing that's really important for CMOs is they have to think about the mix of talent sets within their organization. And I would say, even if you're a small company, even if you're a startup and it's only like 2 or 3 people, doing marketing, like still sort of making sure there's a balance. And so in that context, yes, I agree. The modern marketing department, like having someone who can like, dive into the cloud data warehouse, be able to like, pull this information from Amplitude, be able to see like, okay, well, what's happening with this cohort? And all right, now let me map this back to the data coming in from the CRM to see like, where our sales are relative to this, what's the lifetime value, what are the other demographic or firmographic data we have to align that with. Like the skills to be able to do that is super, super valuable to modern marketing, but that is a that is a skill set that might not overlap with like the person who's like, oh, listen, I'm the content marketer and I see these stories and I'm great at putting them into the narratives and the visuals, and oh, I'm the one who's like able to like jump on the webinars and engage people in these conversations. It just, there's a lot of skills in modern marketing that you're trying to synthesize collectively.
Yeah. I think it also applies to product people. I can tell you this. I had so many fights with people who have gone against my fundamental belief at the moment. I've been convinced in the last couple of years that a product manager that cannot pull data by themselves and not analyze it is useless. And I'm going to go that far, right? I'm going to get some hate mail over this for sure. Because it always happens. They tell me like, yeah, but you don't need to know SQL. I just ask my engineer and everything. And this is the same thing as if I would probably outsource user research or like talking to customers, and the same goes for marketing. If you never talk to your customer, you cannot certain things you just cannot outsource. And I'm not sure it's the case also for data analysis, but like even for product managers that are even closer to data, in my opinion, I have not seen yet a BI tool that is so strong with data integration on the way that you're setting it up, because it's also only as strong as you can set it up, that you could go and just say like, okay, you know what, I'm sitting down now and I'm going to do exploration for 3 hours and see what happens. Just clicking it together, it's I don't know about you, Scott, but like when I do an analysis, I come to some oddity and I'm like, why is this the case right now? Like, so like what's happening on this particular page? And then we need to sub-segment it. Maybe we need to also create another chord or whatever. But there's always some weird stuff happening that I could not click together with the events that we have because I need to do some really weird joins with tables that should not exist in the first place. I don't know. But I think this is something that I notice, and like the skill set just increases because now also product people also need to be good at marketing. I think at some point we just need to have people that can do everything,
Well,
everything,
I mean, this
marketing,
is kind of
sales.
like that whole T-shaped, person concept,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
again, T is probably not accurate because it's not deep in one and broad in the others. It might be
yeah.
sort of
It's
deep
more an
here, a little
N.
bit deeper there, but I do agree. Like, there's a broad set of just sort of digital savviness,
Yeah,
modern digital savviness that you need to have. And so, like, again, to say like, should every marketer be able to like, dive into finding, some data, and we might debate the sequel side of that, but I think the truth is, particularly once you come to a company of any scale and there is so much data and it's in so
hmm,
many different places in so many different ways, it's not even a question about the theoretical skill in the abstract. It's like someone who can afford to take the time and really understand where these data sources are and what is up to date and what's this definition and is this thing aligned here, so that when they actually do synthesize this stuff into a report, the assumptions that have been made, in that
yeah,
data and where it's come from is accurate. That just requires a ton of effort. And so, like, again, I feel like, to throw a marketing manager, who doesn't do that, all day into that, you're like, well, you should be able to get somewhere with that, but boy, you could go down a rabbit hole of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
It is
a lot
insane.
of deep data analysis. I think is why you see people saying, okay, listen, let's have a specialist who's the marketing data analyst,
Yeah, yeah,
and this is
yeah,
going to be their job to like understand
yeah,
all these sources and how do we wrangle them.
yeah. Yeah, this is totally true. I mean, we don't have the traffic that HubSpot has, but like we have 50, I don't know, like dozens of millions of users per month. We have about 150 people and our data department, and we have really good experts. There's like 6 or 7 of them like full time, just like sitting on this data stack and are just trying to make sense of it and consolidating tables, cleaning up the stuff and the mess that we built over the last 5 years. And yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. It was more also a provocative statement. I think, specifically in the case of a sequel, I think the language is not that hard to learn. What people more struggle with is like table structure and stuff, right? Like where's what store, because this is not something that you can learn. You need to know how something has been built, as you said. And then does an event really mean what you think it means? Is it documented? Does someone even know what happens, right? So like I had this funny conversation with John Cutler in my very first episode where we talked about things that just fail sometimes. And usually when it comes to data, there's a lot of stuff failing. Like some events that were just like having a spelling mistake and we mentioned it. We noticed it too late, or something just goes completely crazy and we have no idea. And then it's just like a lot of smart people sitting around tables and someone just goes like, what what we don't know what happened. We've no idea. It never did that before. Did someone document it? No, no idea what the event does. I need to check, right? And then this is just very very regularly happening. And yeah, maybe we can now jump to this particular topic now, just real quick, if you don't mind. I know it's a bit off topic, but in regards to like when you have such high skill requirements, like in so many different complex interactions between stakeholders, people, technology, um, personalities. As far as I know, also at HubSpot, people actually work like humans, and it's stuff just goes completely wrong all the time, right? And this is always under the hood. It's always like you don't see this from the outside. Also, like in tech companies, we break a lot of stuff quite often, more than we care to admit. I can definitely say this also from our side, and this is normal, right? Like it just because there's so many points of failures in a complex system like this that I sometimes wonder why it doesn't break more often. But so I wonder at a company at the scale of HubSpot, and I think, of course, you guys also probably have more processes and more ops as we do, of course, to ensure that everything is running smooth. It doesn't matter how good did you build a perfect system, something always goes wrong at some point, right? Would you agree with the statement? Are things just breaking down occasionally, and sometimes also for stupid reasons?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, any business where, like, if the world was static, right? Like, if we're like, okay, this is the fixed thing, this is what we do, this is what we produce, this is the flow, this, like, if everything was fixed and nothing was changing, then yeah, I mean, right, it's not rocket science to be able to, like, put these mechanisms in place, to deliver and to be able to get sort of like 6 nines reliability, on all of that, because you're iterating, on a stable target. Thing is, of course, like, none of us work in any businesses where that's the reality. It's like this constantly shifting and evolving target, whether it's new things we're wanting to do on the product side, new things we're wanting to do on the marketing side. And so again, at scale, companies try and put really good systems in place to,
Mm-hmm.
like, frame this stuff and try and, like, make sure that, yeah, even that is being piped into a common direction. But you're also, like, by the very nature of, if you're moving forward, you're innovating, you're trying to change things, yeah, you're gonna break old systems, and you're gonna have to figure out, like, okay, oh, we didn't even anticipate this is how this thing could break this
Yeah.
way. How do we fix it? How do we try and prevent that from happening again in the future? I mean, we were talking earlier again about just on the marketing side,
Mm-hmm.
the scale of all the different things marketers have to, like, keep on top of, and they keep changing, and, like, okay, how, I mean, it's, the once upon a time, people in marketing automation, 10 years ago, had this, like, fanciful vision that the marketing automation be one of these things that's like, set it and forget it. You're like, oh, it's just all automated, and our marketing engine just generates prospects and customers for us all day long, and we'll sit back with our cappuccino, and it's just wonderful, isn't it? And of course, right, that was never true, but comically, we look back and we're like, wow, whoever thought set and forget it,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, even the things that we set that are programmatic and they're well defined, again, either, like, the efficacy of a particular like channel or tactic changes over time. The definition of who we're trying to reach, like our customers, the customer expectation, like, they're constantly changing. And so breaking it is perhaps the most extreme version of it. But to, like, look across the entire orchestrated marketing engine and recognize that what was working a certain way last week probably is suffering entropy in other ways this week, and you really have to be consciously, like, paying attention to this and find those signals,
Yeah.
and yeah, rectify them.
Yeah. And this is so beautiful. I remember one of my first talks that I actually still like, because usually the stuff that I put out I start to hate after 4 months. One of the first talks that I still really love is exactly on this topic, and you said it, I think, even smarter than I did back then. So I think in the industrial age we came up with this idea that efficiency over everything, right? So, like, we don't need people to be specialized in anything. We just divide the steps to produce a watch, and we just put one guy over here, one guy over there. We don't care how miserable they are. We're just going to optimize everything. And the
Mhm.
result of this movement was that everything got much more productive. But as soon as systems changed, demands from markets, all of these people were useless. Nobody knew how to create a watch from start to beginning, so they were not able to change the product either. And I think you said, "Ooh, we did not anticipate this." This is a perfect summary of what happened also with our industry. When 20 or 30 years ago we were producing everything, and I think you've also been in the industry back then. I don't know whether you've also been in tech back then, but, like, this waterfall approach that we loved so much, creating 40, 50-page documents on, like, how a product should look like, how the marketing is going to be, and how everything is automated before it even hits the market. Ridiculous. This
It's
entire
almost fiction
waterfall.
writing.
No, yeah, it is, but isn't it? Like, it's this waterfall garbage. And then we thought, oh, agile is coming now, and everything is solved. It turns out that is also not flexible enough. And it's the world is so incredibly complex that the only answer that you have to know what's happening in the future is we don't know, but we want to have specialists and we wanted to enable them and I, we really want to empower them as much as we can so we can react, so we have to stay agile, so staying agile on top of everything is the thing. So I love it that you framed it this way, just to make sure, because I'm a huge fangirl of HubSpot. You guys have not a matrix organization, right? You're cross-functional.
Cross-functional for the most part. I mean, again, it's a
Okay.
very large org now at this point, so yeah,
Yeah, good,
different
good,
teams
good.
and
No,
different groups a little bit different, but
just
generally
just
we look
wanted
at it as cross-functional, right?
just wanted to make sure that my love is not misplaced, because I think that's the other thing that just needs to die now. Matrix organizations. I mean, by and large, right? But I'm with you. Yeah. So okay,
Although
cool.
you
Let's just go ahead.
you can appreciate why matrix organizations came around, because again,
Oh,
it's
of course.
this complexity,
Yeah, yeah.
that we have, and these interdependencies across things that yeah, I think the motivation, like the ideal behind what people are reaching for with matrix organizations wasn't misplaced. It's just, again, this is like any of these sorts of things where you have a hammer and like everything becomes a nail. You're like, oh, okay, well, let's like matrix this here. Well, wait, two matrix level we can create a three-dimensional matrix, and it'll do this way, and everything intersects with everything else. And then at some
Yeah.
point, you're like, wow, I've lost the plot.
I swear
Like,
to
I don't
God.
know who's responsible for what anymore at this point. So yeah, it can go too far, but
I
yeah.
swear to God, Scott, on my next company that I'm going to advise, I'm going to suggest a 3D matrix organization. This is exactly what I'm going to do. This is amazing. This is the next thing. This is perfect. All right. So let's maybe just circle back a little bit, because I would love to hear your take on this. Um, so far, we have not been really challenged a lot on LinkedIn when we talk about PLG. And I don't know too many people who really smart to talk about product like growth, for instance, right? But this also goes now into the direction of marketing, in the sense that, um, as you said, this topic of scaling organizations and how to employ it really specifically is so individual that it makes it really hard to write actionable advice. And I know this from experience, because whenever I try to put something good out, and I try to do at least once in 2 days, like a proper article, it takes a lot of time, because you need to consider eventualities. Okay, then you need to also, like, okay, so common pitfalls, don't do it if this and don't do it if that.
Mm.
And the interesting thing is that people are usually they're challenging, like, PLG doesn't work, PLS that doesn't work, sales led all the way. I still have people like this in the feed, or like someone like a CEO saying, you should try your product at least once a year. And it's just like, why is this guy upvoted? Do it once a month, once a week, do something about it. But anyways, so the B2B buyer personas. So one of the hypotheses is that we have is that the B2B buyer personas are shifting more towards B2C buying behavior. And what that means is that we used to have quarterly budgets, these huge things and long buying processes. The buying processes are still long, but one of the things is that we see is that, and this is also why we can grab them with product-led sales. And also HubSpot is great at this, by the way, right? So HubSpot is absolutely amazing in capturing this market of companies that have more autonomy from their teams to just buy a solution that costs you 10,000 and is becoming, like, I don't know, a 50, 60,000 ACV at some point. Um, this must be something that you guys also notice, right? So, like, more and more enterprise customers are starting to behave like B2C. Like, they do the demo, they sign up by themselves, and then suddenly they land within your salespeople, but they are already pros in the product. Is
Yeah.
this also something that you notice?
Yeah, well, I think, again, this is kind of, I mean, if we want to get a little philosophical about it,
Yes.
like this is just an echo of reverberation of the whole massive transformation that the internet brought, which is basically, before the internet, there was this crazy asymmetric nature between buyers and sellers. The sellers had all the information, they could control the process, they could force meetings. Okay, well, we'll have this, but we need your boss in the room here. And the internet, right? Partly, like, even before companies started publishing all this stuff on the web, right? I mean, other people just started talking. People who became the armchair analysts in their space were publishing it. But ultimately it all shifted. This asymmetry actually reversed Whereas now buyers have the ability to go out and like self-service, so much of the like evaluation process, the selection set, all these different, independent sources that can dive into your communities. They want to get stuff from you. They will get stuff, from the vendor, but they want to get it on their terms, depending on the nature of the product. They actually want to sign it up, see it, play around with it a bit, and so all this because, shifted to a place where, yeah, buyers, again, your mileage varies depending on the nature of your product and your buyer. But yeah, I've seen so many stats in B2B that on average, it is like maybe under 20%, under 10% even of the buyer's journey is actually happening where the buyer is talking to a salesperson. They're just, and even if you have a larger sale where there are multiple influencers, decision makers, contributors to it, even collectively, it still comes down to like, well under 20% that's engaged with salespeople, because they can self-serve it all and they like it, and which is what consumers love to do too. Like, we're sitting on the internet, what's, my vacation options? Like, I'm not calling up a travel agent and be like, okay, well, walk me through what my choices are going to be here. It's a wonderful thing, and this was the whole point of inbound marketing, with HubSpot, was like, if instead of fighting that trend, you actually say, great, this is how buyers want to buy, like, let's give them what they want. Turns out that's not a bad strategy.
Yeah, and it's not just that they want to buy like this. It's just if you have the choice between two equal kind of products, you will go for the one that you can self-test. I don't want to. I cannot be bullied anymore into, well, we will tell you our price once you call the sales agent, and then they tell you so much about our product that you want to buy it. No, I know my budget. I really do. And yeah, I think the market is always shifting more into this, but there's still some remnants, like I used to produce some stuff on a laser at some point, like laser engraving stuff. Like,
Right.
don't ask why, it's just a really weird hobby, whatever. And these are big industrial machines, right? So like I know a little bit about this industrial machine market, and you just do not have that much choice. There's maybe two big brands in America and one in Austria that you go, and the process is still this old, dusty. You go and then they give you a price, and then you have to pretend that you're not that interested, and they lower the price, so the 60,000 offering becomes a 30,000 offering. So it's still sometimes like this view into this old, in this past. It still exists, and and they will stay sales led for quite some time until their market also becomes more commoditized, I think. But yeah, it's inevitable. I just don't think that this market will grow anymore, like the sales led, like grabbable TAM, right? I really think it's going to go more into PLS as we go on. And yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well,
And
this
then the
is
other thing, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, right, like we started, in this chat earlier talking about like the Martech landscape and all these different,
Mm-hmm.
products.
No.
This is why, as frustrated as marketers get with all the choice in the Martech landscape, and same is true in a bunch of other software categories, it's actually really something marketers should celebrate, because all of that is competition, and it is the competition that is actually driven like the value that people get with price, the like shift in like, oh well, the companies that are willing to meet the buyers the way the buyers want to be met, like they start to win out over the ones who don't. And versus like the industrial machine example you gave around these lasers, yeah, if there's only two companies and they've sort of like nailed down the market, right, there's not competition. They have no incentive, to either change, pricing,
No.
sales process, anything like that. So as annoying as the Martech landscape can be, and it's overwhelming, scale, to realize like, hey, that is one of the big drivers of it, is like the competitive value to customers, to us as a
Yeah.
marketer, like trying to choose these things. So competition is good.
Yeah, I do. I do believe so as well. And I think what has also shifted is that, also in these industrial spaces, you are the value of you is on the closing of the contract, right? It's like, okay, she just paid 40,000 for this particular machine. And here's another question for you now, because when I compare what you offer compared to, I don't know, Salesforce or whatever. So let's say I have a sales company, it's going really well. We're gonna onboard on the Sales Hub. So an interesting question is that if I were working at HubSpot, this is not a request, by the way. I checked at some point whether you have job openings, but that it has sailed. It's fine. I have a different career now. But If I was working at HubSpot and I was looking at, like, let's say we make a revenue projection of our accounts, how likely is it that when someone signs up for your products, that within 2 or 3 years they go for an expansion because their business is actually starting to grow, not because they just roll it out to more in the organization, but like their actual business licenses are starting to grow? How do you look at LTV in this regard? So this would be very interesting to me. Do you have some sort of a framework? Because I think
Mm.
the way that we are evaluated is not like, okay, this company is pushing this much revenue. It's about what is your size going to be in 5 years because of your growth that you have. And I think that's where also HubSpot is coming in. Someone that is maybe not that valuable at the start, that valuable, maybe still worth a CAC of $700-800 in the beginning because they're growing really fast with you and also because of you, right? Is this how you look at
I
your customers as well?
Absolutely, it's a big part of the strategy, and I can give you a really concrete, like version of this. So we have a program called HubSpot for Startups. In order to qualify for this, you have to have, like raised money from a
Mm.
established, VC or participated in a well-known incubators. There's some guardrails to this, but basically for those who qualify under this HubSpot for Startups, we give them this huge discount for the product for the first year. And then we give them an almost as huge discount for the second year, and then after that, things start to basically come back to like what the normal pricing is. And so, yeah, I mean, looking at the discounts, I mean, we do not make money on like that first year and that second year,
Mm-hmm.
but it's basically an investment. I believe that, like, listen, these startups, not all of them, but hopefully a good number of them, they're going to succeed. In fact, actually using our software is going to be one of the things that's going to help them succeed. And then when they succeed and they grow, okay, that's the point in time where, like, okay, we can legitimately make money. They have no grudges against paying us money at that point. We've helped them, reach that scale. We're still very attractively priced compared to others, in that space. But yeah, that entire program,
Mm-hmm.
which now is with like thousands and thousands of startups, is an example of HubSpot's commitment that, like, winning on the growth side, like not our growth, the customer's growth,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
tying
Yeah.
that back to us
Yeah.
is really the right long-term strategy.
Yeah, because also with this monthly subscription SaaS pricing that we have, I mean, we're de-risking the customer, right? You can kick this out of your balance sheet any day. So if we don't deliver value continuously, then it's just not going to work, and it's the same for us as well. So I just think this is beautiful. It really is beautiful because you kind of cash in on the success of the customer, which is great because they're happy to give you something if it reduces their operational friction that they have. And for me, it was also like this, like I'm such a big fan of HubSpot, and this is the only company that I invested stock in. I bought HubSpot
Hmm.
when it was 170. This was the only company that I invested money in because of my experience with your customer success, the sales, and the product onboarding. Because I felt like this is the future. This is really the future, in the sense of like how easy it was and how interested it was. It did not feel like, oh, like we're going to sell you now a huge big expansion or whatever. Never the question. It was really about, okay, what do you want to do now? Okay, we want to reach out to our customers like this and this, right? And then we had this amazing customer sales rep that was helping us with all of this. So, you know, this is what's being underestimated, like these ancillary effects, because obviously I talk about it a lot, right? Like I love this, how they're doing it. And none of what I said at all is about the core product itself. It's about the onboarding experience, this lack of frustration of, oh, we need to have a CRM. I'm going to go to holidays for 3 weeks, and you said it. Have the CMO figure it out, right? And it's just like I don't know. I just think that people really underestimate this, and the product is much more than just the core functionality of the product that you have, which is also great, by the way. Just saying.
Yep, experience is everything
Yeah.
in consumer markets and B2B markets. It's funny, it's only just now starting to really get a lot of appreciation of just
Yeah.
how important that is. But it's always been important. We just haven't always acknowledged it, as an industry. But yeah, it's not the product, it's not the pricing, it's not the web,
No.
it's the synthesis of all these things. And I think credit on the HubSpot side really does go to the co-founders Brian and Dharmesh, because really at the center of all of this,
Mm-hmm.
they would say it's culture. it's like, what is the culture of the company you're trying to create, and it's that culture which then manifests itself in the product, in the way sales are handled, in the way customer success is handled. And so, I mean, I work at HubSpot. I'm obviously like a big fan of that. So, take
No, no,
everything
no,
I say
no,
there
no,
with a
no. But
grain
it
of
is.
salt. But I really do think the culture is the key to making that
Yeah.
work across all these touch points.
No, I don't know how the culture is from the outside. That I cannot say, right? But like I think the biggest thing about the HubSpot story, and that it's always being cited, of course, right? Like HubSpot, the poster child of PLG, the poster child of this and that. But like the one story that I really cannot get out of my head in terms of this big market shift was that HubSpot was already successful when you guys bet on, and I think it was a little bit before you joined. I'm not quite sure now, but like this big experiment was like, okay, like we're gonna offer a demo, we're gonna offer this PLG motion, we're gonna separate the team completely from the organization. We let you do in the basement whatever you want to do. Do not even attempt to put this into our tech stack. This required buy-in from the C level to just say like, hey, we're already growing 30% year on year or whatever your profit was, and we're still going to disrupt ourselves like this. Who does this? It's amazing, right? So I
That would
think
be Brian Halligan. Yes.
yeah, but like this requires a lot of courage to do this, and I think it's amazing that it succeeded, because I don't know where we would be without it, because this was a clear proof that this works. Also helps that you have now a product offering that goes over different verticals. That makes things easier, of course. But like it's great. It's really really great. Yeah. So I can say it because I don't work at HubSpot. So, but I have stock.
Well,
So I'm
thank
trying to
you.
push the price now up. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for this. That was really interesting. Like this dive into HubSpot. So maybe we're coming back to HubSpot now. If you could travel back 10 years in time, Scott, in what company would you have been if you would have
Yeah,
if you
I
could
feel
have
like
chosen
this
anything?
is probably a lame answer, but it's a hand to God truth.
Yeah,
I joined HubSpot 5 years ago, and so if
yeah.
I could go back 10 years and join a company, I would have joined HubSpot 10 years ago.
Hmm.
I really do think the experience has been phenomenal. It would have to have had the opportunity. So when I joined, it was like just over 1,000 people or so, and like this
Hmm.
ability to influence the path the company has taken, from 1,000 people to 8,000 people.
Yeah.
I consider it such a privilege. Like it's really been amazing to be a part of this journey. If I could go back and have also had, the experience of, oh, well, when this started out, it was like 100 people, and how did it get from 100 to 1,000, oh, yeah. But sorry,
No,
HubSpot,
no, no,
HubSpot,
no.
HubSpot. What can I say?
No, 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 absolutely. And it's crazy what kind of dimension this has taken, Like you go through so many stages as you go from like the small company in the backyard for somewhere to like, how many do you have now? 8,000 people?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there, right? Yeah.
Amazing. And so many subsidiaries as well, right? Like in Japan, you also have one right now, like I think, right? Something like,
Well, it's all part of like HubSpot, but yeah, there's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah. But you're
Japanese
everywhere.
entity and whatnot. But yeah,
The overlord is taking over. It's like it's consuming everything.
I don't know about that, but I mean, again, still in the scheme of things, like I think HubSpot's early in its journey. Like when I look at I mean, there are massive software companies out there that
Hmm.
10
Yeah,
times the size, 50 times the size of HubSpot, and so yeah, I still think we're in that sort of scale up stage where
yeah,
yeah, as excited as I would have been for this past 10 years, like I look forward to the next 10 years. I'm like, yeah, things are
yeah.
just getting started.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy about this entire scale. Like if we look at Salesforce or like these huge like mega, like I mean Microsoft as well, right? Like they're also in this space. They're in this space and they're huge. They're huge. Usually this entire distribution game is that alone is very interesting to see. And you're the only ones, well not the only ones, but like you're the ones that are successful. They're actually coming from the bottoms up, and instead of like okay, we have enterprise customers and these are going to tell you like now you're going to use Microsoft Teams for the rest of your life, right? It's like it's the other way around. And yeah, I hope you take more from their market share. I'm not working anymore for Microsoft, so they can do whatever they want, I don't care. But just saying, like, I really want to see you guys succeed, so my stock is getting more
Thank you.
valuable. No. Okay. Let's close the topic on HubSpot. In general, when you look at the trends that, and I know you are one of those that I did not have to prepare for this question, but like trends that excite you that you would bid on, and not the five that you cited last time in your last presentation, but like if you had to bet on one trend, it can be from marketing, it can be from anything. What would you bet on is going to happen in the next couple of years that you would say like, hey, this is a thing that excites me?
Ooh. All right, I'm going to give you three choices. I can talk about what's happening at the data layer. I can talk about what I see with this whole no code movement. And I can talk about what I've been seeing here lately with generative AI, because
Mm.
all three of those to me are super fascinating. So since you're saying pick one, I'm
No,
going to
no,
turn
go
this
ahead.
back to you. Which of one of those three is like most interesting to you?
So now I'm getting asked the questions. I'm already talking too much on my own podcast, Scott. But to me, okay, let's do this with AI because I'm very interested in generative AI on image processing. So it's not exactly the same thing, but like image processing AI content also as well has been just mind blowing to me. Like what just happened in the last 6 to 7 months is
Yeah.
just crazy. Absolutely crazy. The context that an AI is capable of understanding and putting into content or pictures, even moving, it's it blows my
Yeah.
mind. And it's not about faking content. It's about you create a picture that looks so crazy good with context. Like I don't know, I could now type in Scott Brinker with a piece of bacon in his hand. I don't know whether you're a vegan. Okay, let's just say tofu. And really, Mid Journey would produce something really crazy. And this is blowing my mind because it shows you this contextual understanding that we manage with machine learning models that puts something out that is actually usable. This is not just a toy anymore,
Yeah.
and that fascinates me.
Exactly. Yeah, no. So yeah, you and I are fully aligned, and it was the same thing for me. So I mean, my background is computer science, and so I'd
Mm.
studied a lot of AI and machine learning algorithms back in the day. As it turns out, I'm a terrible software engineer. So thank goodness I moved on
Can
to
relate.
like more adjacent careers. But I was very comfortable with this idea of like, okay, most things that people were calling AI in marketing really is simply just some
Mm.
relatively standardized machine learning algorithms to identify patterns, clusters. We can make sort of predictions about what we've seen here, what we can expect there. Not to poo-poo that, some actually really useful stuff that has helped improve the efficiency and the efficacy of marketing. But the stuff with the generative AI, with the GPT-3 on language models, the stuff with like DALI, stable diffusion on image generation, variations of this that we see, how
Yeah.
people are applying this to translation, to turning still things into like videos. Like I can make a little script and an animated like video just comes together. Like I've been amazed by what's possible, and it's still not totally prime time. But it's no longer a science fair project. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
actually, you could really use this stuff. I just saw a demo the other day. I forget the name of the product, but it's a company that has harnessed GPT-3, and they've done it in this system that is dynamically generating sales emails. Like, so it used to be we'd have
Yeah.
people, SDRs, you know, no, that's like this thing is dynamically generated and based on what it knows about the prospect, from
Yeah.
early interactions, based on then how it matches that to, things we've seen with other prospects, the data,
Mm-hmm.
the content data it has available to it. And then it sort of crafts these like messages and can do the replies and the sequences to it. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm like, it is so humans, have been emailing me stuff on this. I'm like, and it's still in its early phase. I mean, was it this GPT-4 is going to come out by the
Yeah.
end of this year, early next year? Another step up. I feel like the analogy I sometimes think of is, for years we kept talking about, the year of mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this will be the year that will be the year of mobile in marketing, and everyone would predict that, and then a year would go by, and you're like, okay, no, not really. All right, next year gonna be the year of mobile, and all right, not nearly. And then all of a sudden, this tipping point, that happened, in the late, aughts or whatnot there, where all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, it hit a tipping point. It hit,
Yeah.
this inflection where actually, no, the real use cases, the how people are adopting it, hit that curve. And
Yeah.
suddenly it was the year of mobile and it was everywhere and it changed so much. And I feel like that is where we are at with some of this generative AI stuff. Is people have been hyping AI, overhyping AI for
Yeah.
years and years and years, and then you'd look at what it actually was, and you'd be like, yeah, no, that's yeah. And now, like, literally, like, people like you and me who are, I
Yeah.
mean, we're technical, we're skeptical, we're not easily, susceptible to hype, have seen stuff coming out this year. You're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
what this is likely to iterate to over the next 2 to 3 years,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
mind
Absolutely.
blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I don't know what to say. It's exactly what it is. I'm on the same equal level of excitement. I can tell you. So, like, I'm not plugging something here, but I recently I just was interested in getting a demo from Crocs Intelligence. I don't remember exactly the overall whatever the context was, but basically what they do is they do for retail companies like huge chains. They generate BI based on language models. So this is for people who are not proficient with data analysis and statistical analysis. They just go and say monthly report from Canada, and then the language model is like trying to put together based on what they usually used to do, and then just generates dashboards on them. And they use their, I don't know whether they use GPT-3 or whether they use their own language model. I have no idea, but this is the kind of application. And they use, and this is a public, this is already a product in use and stuff, right? And we will see much more of this. And I'm just excited for the future in this regard. I'm not scared at all, by the way, that this is going to take away any of our jobs. It's going to take the annoying stuff away. And that's what we should, like, this low effort crap at the bottom that we do not want to automate anyways. Um, sorry, that we do not want to do manually anyways. Like, I really believe that, because what I once tried to do is, like, I used one of these content AIs and tried to write about my topics. I was helpless. It's totally helpless. If you tell it to write about PLG, you only see the same 3 tips coming up that everybody's posting on the web. So I'm like, I'm good. I'm good, Scott. You're also going to be in business with your Martech landscape. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Although
But
I'll
yeah,
tell you, so I'm right in the middle of preparing like a presentation here, on trends for the coming year. And so
yeah,
usually, like, I'm a visual person, so I like to have nice imagery associated with, my presentations. And usually I waste a whole ton of time like hunting around for the right images and all the licenses and all this. This time I said, like, all right, let's try it. We're going to do all the images for this presentation
yes,
through Dolly, about, like, I don't know, $20 worth of credits, which is an infinite amount of like actual image
yeah,
generation. I'm like, yeah, this is faster, it's better, it's cooler, and it is exactly to your point. It's not like it created the presentation for me,
no, it's a
but for
support.
me as a
Mm.
presentation creator, being able to like have these superpowers for pulling in the things I want, yeah, it is a
Yeah,
force multiplier.
that's fantastic. We should talk about this at some point. If we ever get together somewhere, like, I don't know if you're ever at Inbound. I don't know whether I'm going to be at Inbound. I don't know. But, like, if we ever do, I'm going to show you some stuff that you can do with Midjourney, because at that point they probably have version 5 out. So I think this is a fantastic way to end the podcast. I think we talked about superpowers, HubSpot, and everything else that is exciting. I hope you also had fun, Scott.
It was great. Thank you so much for having me. Really
I
enjoyed this
think
conversation.
I think you are a terrific guest, and I want to thank you for the gift that you've given me of actually thinking that I'm now a little bit smarter. Also, thanks to your content. Know that it makes a difference in some people's lives. For me, it definitely does. I know also from posting on LinkedIn, you do not get a lot of positive feedback for the amount of stuff that we are posting. I know this.
Mm,
So, really, really appreciate it. Please continue doing so.
thank you.
So,
Thank you.
thank you so much. And that's it.
All right.